What's the easiest way to make a houndstooth pattern in Tunisian crochet? Let's find out together in this tutorial. You see here a few examples, and this is just a simple, very easy honeycomb in Tunisian crochet made with 2 colors of yarn. For this pattern to be successful, you need to choose yarns with enough contrast between them. So when you pick a color combination, as you can see, you can even use bright colors, but you need to keep in mind the contrast between the 2 colors of yarn. It's easy to find out how much contrast there is if you just take a black and white photo of your chosen yarn and see if there is enough of a difference between the 2 colors. For example, even here we might have a bit of contrast, maybe not as much as in this example here, but between these 2 maybe there isn't enough contrast to get a nice pattern to show up. So in this tutorial I will be demonstrating using the white and the blue, and the pink and purple would also make an interesting combination but with a smaller contrast. When working this stitch pattern, you want to work very tightly. So normally in Tunisian crochet we want to have a soft and malleable fabric, but if you do that with this stitch combination and the 2 colors, you would not get the houndstooth pattern. You would get some more spread out stitches. So in order to get the actual houndstooth, you need to work at a tight gauge. That means for this example, I will be using chunky yarn with a 6mm hook. This is close to the recommended hook size for the yarn, and I could probably go even smaller, but let's try with the 6mm. For this I used a decay weight yarn with a 5mm hook, where I normally would use a hook that starts at 6mm for decay weight. The pattern itself is very simple. We will start with white. You can start with whichever color you like. And you make a foundation. I have a separate video that shows you how to make a foundation row in many different styles, but I will go with the usual chain and picking up the stitches in the back bumps of the chain. Now for this pattern, you can use an even number of starting stitches. So I chained 11 and I will have 10 stitches in the stitch pattern and the last stitch. Using the same color of yarn, we pick up loops in the back bumps to make the first forward pass. And in my case, I will pick up 11 loops for a total of 12 loops on the hook. You will notice that it's not so easy to pick up the loops because the yarn is thicker than what you're used to for Tunisian crochet. Let me take this out of the frame, and now we switch to the second color. You bring the second color in, chain 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2 to return. Now we start the honeycomb stitch pattern, which is 1 Tunisian simple stitch and 1 Tunisian purl stitch. Repeat it until the end of the row. If you don't know how to make the honeycomb stitch, I have separate tutorials for each of the component stitches and for the honeycomb stitch itself. So that's almost a finished forward pass. And now we need to make the last stitch. Usually when we do that, we have 2 loops here on the edge. But now we only have 1, so we insert the hook underneath the 1 loop of the other color. And then we bring the first color up over the hook. This creates the second loop that we usually have here, the V shape. And then we pick up a loop here. Then we switch the yarn to the first color. And now we chain 1 and then yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row. The second row in the honeycomb stitch pattern starts with a purl stitch and then a simple stitch, purl stitch, simple stitch, and we repeat this until the last stitch. Now again we insert the hook under the one vertical bar and bring up the yarn from the second color. Then we pick up this loop and we let go of the first color and pick up the second color. We chain 1 and then yarn over, pull through 2. Now in the first few rows you won't really see the houndstooth pattern form up, but give it a few more rows and then you will start to see it. The second pattern repeat. Now we have again a Tunisian simple stitch, purl stitch, repeated until the end. And at the end of the row, go underneath the first loop with the first color and then make the second loop using the yarn and drop a loop, switch the yarn and chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Next row we start again with a purl stitch, simple stitch, and then repeat. And at the end of the row, insert the hook under the one loop, bring up the other color and drop a loop. Then switch to the second color, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we are already starting to see the houndstooth pattern. If you look here, you have the tiny motifs. And at the top, of course, it will not look like the houndstooth. So I will make one more row in this pattern. And then I will show you how to bind off using the first color so that the top and bottom are symmetrical. So now all you have to do is bind off in pattern, starting with a purl stitch, slip it, simple stitch, slip it, and this mirrors the bottom edge so that the two edges look the same. At the end of the row again we insert the hook underneath the one vertical bar and bring up the second color to create the second vertical bar and then slip stitch. And then you can cut off the yarn and weave in the ends. Now if we look at the edge, you can get rid of this little thread here by rotating the two yarns so that this doesn't show up, but it doesn't bother me too much. If you didn't bring up the second yarn, then you would have a much uglier edge. So If you want to, you can hide this underneath. Like you can see here, this is the return pass yarn going underneath here. But this is the houndstooth pattern in Tunisian crochet. There are other methods to make much bigger motifs, but this is the easy version and it looks nice on both sides. And you can do it without thinking. If you know how to do the honeycomb stitch, then you know how to do this. And if you want to make the mittens that I showed here at the beginning, there will be a pattern on the blog, and you can see the pattern is also on the thumb. You can make this section longer. Of course, if you want to, you can make a full mitten. You can also use this stitch pattern to make hats or scarves or other beautiful things. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you check out the other tutorials on this channel, and you can subscribe to my email updates and to this channel if you want to know when I publish more tutorials. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye!